Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to this Arabic student companion to the Qur'an. It is my intention for us to complete the entire Qur'an in this series, but of course we're going to begin with Al-Fatiha, literally the opener, Al-Fatiha of the Qur'an. So in each of these episodes I'd like to complete maybe half a page of the Qur'an, depending on sort of how much grammar and vocabulary needs to be learnt. And every week we'll have an episode. Maybe we'll do more if it's very popular. We can speed up the process and maybe do 2 episodes a week. But what I like to do is go through the entire Qur'an bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So of course we'll begin with Al-Fatiha. And in this series I'll simply go through whatever passage there is at hand, and I'll explain it from an Arabic language student's perspective. So this isn't a tafsir, this isn't, me deducing rulings, this isn't a fiqh class, this is from an Arabic language perspective. The vocabulary, the grammar, and things like that we'll go over, inshallah. So what is this passage? So of course we begin our recitation of the Qur'an with A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Of course that isn't one of the ayat. We seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from ash-shaytanir rajim, from the accursed shaytan, the cast out shaytan perhaps. So the first ayah is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So we have bi ism here. Bi ism, with the ism. Bi is often translated as with, but I like by the ism. In English we say in the name of, and I don't really like that because it's not really in anything. Like you wouldn't use the preposition fi in Arabic for that. But anyway, bi, by, or by means of. The name of Allah. This is what we call an adafa construction. By the name of Allah. An ism, as I say, is a name. It's also a grammatical term that we use for a whole group of words, a group in English, words like adjectives, nouns, even adverbs, words like that. They are all what we call asma. They are each an ism. So by the ism of Allah, Bismillahi, there's lots of kasras in this. We have bismi, because the word that comes after a preposition, in this case bi, will have a kasra on the end. It will be the case of majroor. Bismillahi, Bismillahi, in the name of Allah. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahman, and Ar-Rahim. These 2 words are translated in different ways in different translations. A modern one that I read recently, Musharraf Hussein's translation, just translates these as the kind and the caring. Of course, there's other words for kind, caring, latif, and others. But we could say Ar-Rahman, the most compassionate, Ar-Rahim, the most merciful. That's sort of a more classical translation of those 2 terms. All of them have kasras on the end. All of them do, because they're all in agreement with Allah. Bismillahi, in the name of Allah, in the name of the most compassionate and most merciful Allah, right? Because they all kind of agree in gender and definiteness and number. They're all al, and with kasras on the end. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Good, although there's probably a discussion actually as whether these are sifat, they are descriptions, or whether these are badal, potential exchanges with Allah. But because perhaps we could say Bismir Rahman, in the name of the Rahman, or Bismir Rahim, in the name of Ar-Rahim, right? Often when you have kind of things you could exchange, this is something called badal in Arabic. But there's often, with many things, there's a discussion as to whether something is a sifa or something is badal. Anyway, I digress. Maybe I'll read through the rest of the surah, although I'm sure it's one that you all know anyway, before I do the breakdown. So after Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, it is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Saying Ameen isn't actually one of the ayat, and it's not actually in the Mus'haf at all. The Ameen is something only required in the Salah. So anyway, from an Arabic language perspective, I kind of wish actually I'd said the harakah on the end of each one of the ayat. That's how they teach it here in Somalia. When like my children were being taught Surat Al-Fatiha here, they were taught Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. They were taught it like that, and I thought it was quite nice. So Alhamdu, hamd means praise. Alhamdu, when you put al at the beginning of a word in Arabic like this, you're kind of turning it into the concept of that thing sometimes. Like if we're to talk about al-hub, love, or al-hayat, life. Al-maut, death. You're talking about the concept of that thing. It's not just saying it's kind of a death or a life or a love. It's the hamd, the praise is lillahi. The praise is due to Allah, as in hamd, the concept of hamd. Hamd inherently is due to Allah. Who is Allah Rabbil Alameen? Again, there's a debate whether this is a sifa or badal, whether it is whether Rabb is a sifa of Allahi. But in any case, Rabb is Lord of Al-Alameen. Again, this is an idafa construction. This is Rabbil Alameen, Lord of the Alameen. Alameen is the worlds. An alam, not to be confused with alim. An alim with a kasra on the lam is a knowledgeable person or a scholar. But alam means a world. Alam, plural of which alamuna. But in this case, alamina, because it is majroor, because it is mudaf ilayhi. So all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Again, we have these two terms as well to give more description to the Rabb, give description to the Rabbul Alameen, or Rabbil Alameen in this case, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Maliki Yawmiddin. So the king of the day, of the deen. Okay. So this is like an extended idafa in a way. It's the something of the something of the something. The Maliki. Maliki, why does Maliki have a kasra as well? It's all kind of following on from the li before. Alhamdu lillahi. Alhamdu lirrahman ar-rahim. Alhamdu limaliki yawmiddin. It's all as if that was in the place of Allah, right? In alhamdulillahi. The li is kind of applied to later words because we're giving all praise to that one. Maliki. There's obviously some people who, well, not some, many people from West Africa don't recite this as Malik, the possessor. They recite this as Melik, as in the king. But they both mean really the same thing. The verb meleka means to own, and a Malik is an owner, or a Melik is a king. But when you say Maliki Yawmiddin or Maliki Yawmiddin, the meaning is essentially the same. But they're two perfectly fine recitations, just our brothers and sisters who recite in the style of Warsh, mostly from West Africa, they tend to say Maliki Yawmiddin, whereas people who recite in the Hafs style, which I think is the majority of the Ummah, well, actually I don't want to speak out of turn, actually, I'm not too sure on that, but anyway, most of us will have heard Maliki Yawmiddin, the owner of the Yawm, of the day, of the deen. There's a few different terms used in the Qur'an for that day, for the final day, for the day of judgment, day of resurrection, day of reckoning. And like we have multiple terms in English, we also have Yawm al-Qiyamah, Yawm al-Ba'ath, Yawm al-Deen. And the Deen one is to do with the term dain, meaning a debt. It's the day when kind of the moral debts will be paid, as it were. It's not really the day of religion. I mean, it is as well, but it comes from the term dain, meaning like it's the day when the debts are repaid, you know. You will be paid back in full, or you will have to pay in full. Very nice. Okay, this next bit's really useful. So, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We always have an interesting lesson, Arabic Unlocked, when we teach this إِيَّا word, because we've heard it in many places. Okay, so what is إِيَّا's job? إِيَّا's job is when we want an object pronoun before a verb. So that's tricky for a reason, okay? Because object pronouns are connecting pronouns. They are ضمائر متصلة. They are connecting pronouns. So we would normally say نعبدك, we worship you. وَنَسْتَعِينُك, and we seek your help, okay? We seek help you and we worship you. But what if we want to put the ka at the beginning? Because it's connected, we can't just use it as a standalone word. We can't say ka na'budu wa ka nasta'in. So one of Iya's jobs, it's not the only use of the word Iya in Arabic, but it's one of Iya's jobs. We say Iyyaka na'budu. It is you that we worship. Wa iyyaka nasta'inu. And then, you know, ka obviously referring to Allah, you. We're speaking to Allah directly here. Na'budu, we worship, from the verb abada, he worshipped. Ya'budu, he worships in the present. Na'budu, we worship. And then nasta'inu is from the verb ista'ana, yasta'inu, meaning to seek aun, to seek help. Yes, very nice. Okay, we'll move it on, inshallah. I don't want my camera to run out of battery. Keeping an eye on its on this battery. Anyway, so ihdina from the verb hada yahdi, ihdi, ihdina, ihdi, guide, guide us. What? Surat al-mustaqima. The Surat is a word for a path, okay? Surat is a word that I've actually never seen outside of the Qur'an. And I even remember one of my teachers even telling me it's only a word found in the Qur'an, Sirata. But it's kind of interesting that it doesn't say ihdina ala sirat al-mustaqim. It's just guide us the sirat al-mustaqim. Don't guide us upon it or to it or through it. Guide us the straight path, which leaves it more open. It's not just being guided to it. It's not just being guided upon it, but it's all of those things. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. So ihdina sirat al-mustaqima. This is actually a sirat al-mustaqima. That's like it's just like a phrase, right? It's a sirat al-mustaqim. Those two words agree in definiteness, gender, number, and case. So guide us of the straight path, not the path of straightness or anything like that. Guide us as-sirat al-mustaqima. What else about this path? Sirat al-ladhina. The path of who? Okay, this is actually, there's not a sign of it. If it was, normally when we're saying the path of the men, for example, we'd say sirat al-rijali, for example, if that were the case here. But it's not. We have al-ladhina, and al-ladhina, meaning those who, is a word which is mebni. You know, it doesn't express its case by changing its vowels at all. So the path of those who, sirat al-ladhina, although al-ladhina is the mudaf ilayhi here, like it is the possessor of the sirat, but we don't see any clues of that in the word al-ladhina. Those who an'amta alayhim, from the form 4 verb actually an'ama, meaning to bestow blessings. Of course, we have the word ni'mah, ni'matun, the plural ni'am, which means a blessing. But then we have this verb an'ama, meaning to bless upon somebody. Okay, so an'amta, you blessed alayhim, upon them. غير المغضوب, غيري. غيري is a really useful word actually, meaning not or other than. غير المغضوب, not the مغضوب. من المغضوب, who is the مغضوب? مغضوب is the ism maf'ul, or what we call the passive participle, from the verb غضب, يغضب, meaning to be angry. Al-maghdub are those who have, the maghdubi alayhim rather, are those who have incurred anger upon them. The verb غضب means to be angry. Maghdub is has incurred anger alayhim, upon them. Al-maghdubi alayhim, those who have incurred anger upon them. Wala dhalin, and neither. Wala, and no. The dhalina, either. We don't want to be either of those groups. The dhalina, there is actually a verb, dhalla, and this is the ism fa'il of that, dhalun, in the singular. There's another plural, I think, actually, dhawalun. But we use dhalin here. Yeah, it kind of rhymes with like mustaqim and nasta'in and ad-din and those words as well. So it fits from a poetic standpoint as well. But yes, Allah-leen. Some of the mufassirin, I can't think of a explicit hadith that refers to this, but I know that it's in the books of tafsir though, that refer to al-ghayr al-maghdubi wa al-dhalin being a reference to the maghdubi being the Jews specifically, and the dhalin, sorry, I didn't even explain what that is. The verb dhalla in the form 1, dhalla, means to be astray. So dhalin are those who are astray. So yeah, referring to the maghdubi alayhim being the Jews and the dhalin being the Christians. Because even we can see today, subhanAllah, like they're all love and respect to our Jewish and our Christian cousins. They're very, very close to us in many ways, despite the politics. The Muslims should always sort of extend their kindness to the Jews and the Christians. But from a theological standpoint, if we look at them, the Jews, they're not necessarily like people who are astray, because they actually have very firm grip on their scripture. Like you find Christians like Jews rather, who have very firm grip on their scripture and on their rulings and things like that, and are willing to adhere to them. But then the Christians are people who perhaps don't. If you look at the Christians in general, of course there are lots of Christians who take the scripture very seriously, but if we're to think of them as their separate a separate ummah, look at them as a whole ummah, you would kind of get that impression even today. Okay, so that's everything for this episode. Thank you so much for listening along. Hopefully that's all been very, very useful for you, inshallah. And we will continue next week at the beginning of Surat Al-Baqarah. We'll do maybe, when you open the Mus'haf, I'll show you here, right? Like when you open the Mus'haf to Surat Al-Fatiha, right, we have this page, don't we? We have sort of Surat Al-Fatiha here, and then a little bit at the beginning of Surat Al-Baqarah. Maybe I'll do this whole passage from the beginning of Surat Al-Baqarah, the first 5 ayat in our next episode, inshallah. Good news is actually I have a bonus resource with this particular episode on Patreon for the people who support the podcast at £5 a month. I'll do a bonus resource for you over there as well, inshallah. I'll do a little worksheet that you can print, and you have good notes and things like that for these episodes. And I'll do one of those for every single one of these episodes. So if you subscribe over there at £5 a month and support the podcast a little bit, that'll absolutely mean the world to me. And there'll be some more bonus resources for you over there. But in any case, come back tomorrow for another episode of the Arabic with Sam podcast, of course. Or, come back next week if you want our next installment of the Arabic Student Companion to the Qur'an. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.